This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on India's befitting reply to China's transgression attempt. The participants are Lieutenant General Satish Dua, defense expert, and Ajay Banerjee, journalist.
Good evening. India's and China's military clash near Tawang, which happened on 9th of December, Defense Minister made a very categorical statement today in Parliament saying that our troops, Indian troops, pushed back the Chinese from the Yangtze area and there was no serious casualty and there was no fatality. General Satish Dua, this is the recent clash and the clashes have increased in the past 3-4 years. 2020 we saw in the eastern Ladakh, now in Arunachal Pradesh. How do you see this panning out, sir?
You see, we have the bulk of the border, international border between India and China is a line of actual control. It's not an international border, it's a line of actual control. That means it's a border which still has to be resolved. And to explain this to the listeners, there are there are more than one different perceptions of the line of actual control. What we perceive as line of actual control, but when China says their version of line of actual control is coming inside Indian territory. So over a period of years, we worked out a mechanism that pending resolution, resolving the border issue, the actual border, both sides are allowed to patrol up to the area that they perceive is the line of control. So what happens is that there is a common ground that can vary from 2 kilometers to 8 kilometers, but at that common ground, both sides do patrol in their own time schedule of patrolling. Sometimes, when they patrol like this, patrols from both sides, that is the Indian Army as well as the Chinese PLA, they come face to face. When they come face to face, they both try to tell each other to go away, this is our territory. So there we have very set drills. The drills are, first you shout across to them, because when we have a language issue. So they make banners in each other's language and they show banners to each other. But sometimes things get a little out of hand. There is some pushing and shoving that has taken place in the recent past. You all must have seen or heard about it in the media. And then sometimes it goes beyond, it leads to fisticuffs, etc. Now, 2 years ago in Ladakh, Galwan was one such incident which had gone horribly wrong, where it led to casualties on both sides. Similarly, once it happened that a couple of shots were fired in the region of Pegongso Lake. So thereafter, we have had a series of meetings. We also have a system of confidence building measures, that border personnel meeting at different levels, a commanding officer level or a brigade commander or a sector commander's level and a general's level. We try and sort out these problems with the help of meetings which are long drawn. So now, having given this background, now what has happened is that earlier our focus was on Ladakh for the last 2 years. And there a great build-up has taken place after Galwan, Pegongso. From both sides, both the armies have built up and we are in a state of readiness, in operational readiness. But meanwhile, several rounds of talks have taken place and there have been some understanding and we have pulled back from some flashpoints, although a couple of flashpoints still remain, coming to Arunachal and this incident that took place 4 days ago. Here, again, there has been a face-off, the face-off between our troops and theirs. But it does not seem to be a typical patrol-to-patrol face-off, because as you just now brought out and the Defense Minister, Raksha Mantri, has said that we have thwarted an attempt for Chinese attempt to try and overrun a post of ours. Now, posts are, what is a post? A post is occupying a dominating peak, a mountain peak, which dominates the area all around it. So if they have tried to come to our post, that is already established post, and that is where we have again, without firing a shot, the issue has been, the soldiers have been pushed back. That is, the Chinese soldiers have been pushed back. And I think this is a cause for concern, though we have it on good account that the issue was eventually resolved. It did not linger for a very long time. It was resolved between the local level commanders. Over to you, Ajay.
General, to make our listeners understand, since you have brought it out very eloquently that the line of actual control is disputed and it is not earmarked on the ground. So, General, you presume that such kind of face-offs will happen will continue to happen in the future also, and we need to be mature as a nation to how do we deal with it, or how the Indian Army deals with it?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Until and unless we resolve the border problem, you see, there is no resolution. We have to have one line. Now, let us say, our borders with Pakistan in Punjab, I will not talk of J&K because that's another kettle of fish, but let's say Punjab, Rajasthan, there is no difference of opinion as to which is the international border between the two countries. Now, similarly, we need to resolve this in between India and China, because we have 3,499 kilometers of LAC. Now, that's 3,500 kilometers of LAC. So many flashpoints waiting to happen. So many situations sometimes go out of hand unintentionally also. So, I'll get back to your question. Your question was, until this is resolved, we will have to be prepared. We will have to be prepared for such kind of face-offs or, misunderstandings that crop up between two sides when they are carrying out patrolling. And like you yourself said, yes, we should be matured enough. We are two rising powers. I mean, China is already there. India is a rising power. Both are nuclear countries. So we have to make sure that for a small incident, which may be a misunderstanding, or which may be somewhere at times at a tactical level, lower level commanders, it should not escalate out of control.
General, you have very rightly said it should not escalate out of hand. It has 2-3 times in the past 2.5 years, India and China have exchanged, the armies of the two countries have exchanged blows. There have been a lot of talk between the diplomats about how to resolve it. The LAC remains undemarcated. There has been talk between the two nations. The special representatives have been talking for the past decade or so, resolving these issues. To explain to our listeners, why is this not being resolved?
It's not a simple question to answer. I mean, I should say that's a very good question. Now, we tried to make efforts. In 1993 and 1996, we have signed some peace and tranquility agreements. We have sort of agreed by certain norms that which we will abide by while operating in close proximity of each other. But when it comes to resolving the problem or resolving the border on ground, there seems to be some reluctance on the Chinese part, because the first step that it involves is exchange of maps. And when we came to exchange of maps, the Chinese side is hesitant to give us maps. The first thing that they have to do is we have to give them our maps, what is our perception. They have to give us their maps, what is their perception. And then we have to sit down together and find a via media. But Chinese side is wary of giving us their maps. Long ago, decades ago, once they gave a map, and they actually even retracted that map back from us. So, be that as it may, the good part is that we have different layers of levels or different levels of talks. And our situation is not, Galwan notwithstanding, our situation is not as volatile as it is on the LOC with Pakistan. So we have to continue with our efforts to exchange the maps, to resolve the border, and in which diplomats also will have to get involved along with the military personnel.
Janadua, this clash, will come back to the clash at Arunachal Pradesh. The RM today, the Raksha Mantri, was very categorical when he made a statement that please have full faith in our defense forces in tackling such situations. Both the houses, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, were unanimous in thumping the desk for the Indian Army's role in thwarting this latest attempt at Tawang, next to Tawang on the 9th of December. How do you see this as an Indian Army general, that the faith of the nation in the Indian Army, how do you see that?
Indian Army is very clear on a couple of points. Firstly, we are very clear that our operational preparedness, our operational readiness is at its best at all times, whether it is winters, summers, biting cold, a snowstorm or a blizzard. Indian Army is equipped to handle such adversities. Secondly, we don't have to look back over our shoulders to get some orders from somebody. We are always ready to be able to face such situations. And that is what has happened this time. There was a very large strength. If I'm just going by the news channel, they said about 300 odd soldiers came in. Now, if such a large strength is to try to force its way into an area where we perceive as, which we know is ours, and if the Indian soldier has thwarted such attempts, I think that is the bravery and preparedness or the bravery and the preparedness of Indian Army and the Indian soldiers speaks for itself. And I can reassure the nation that as long as Indian Army is there on the post, we will be there to safeguard the territorial integrity of the country, our borders, at any cost.
And I must remind the listeners that temperatures out there in Yangtze, where this clash took place, at the moment are in -10 or -12 at night time. And this is what General Dua has also brought out, the readiness of the Indian Army, those winter clothing, the arms, the ammunition, the morale of the boys right on the ground. These are very remote areas. General Dua, these are sensitive matters, the deployments where we are posted. These are boys put in a lot of effort to be remain posted there. The Indian Army and the nation and the taxpayer pays to put the Indian Army to protect these places. Are you, as a former military general, satisfied with the role of the Indian Army in protecting this long and contentious LAC with China?
We have adequate level of preparedness. All the things that you may have heard about in 1962 during that war, we did not have equipment, we did not have adequate clothing. Those are things of the past. Today, we have all modern equipment, we have the right weapon systems, and we have all the wherewithal that we need to defend our borders. Having said that, I will add a postscript to say there is never an end to wanting more modern equipment, because in warfare, there is always a better weapon that is coming out, a better equipment that is coming out, for whether it is for the crew comfort or for improving the efficiency of a soldier. And the Indian Army and the armed forces, we are constantly on the lookout for such equipment and such weaponry.
General, when we talk about infrastructure, there is an open source domain available that China is building a lot of infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, military infrastructure on its side of the LAC. I must clarify, on its side of the LAC. How do you see that we can match this infrastructure?
Well, you are right that they are building infrastructure on their side of the LAC. As far as the road access are concerned, their development in the border areas is much better than ours, because for some reasons, I'll not expand the discussion, for some reasons, we did not create roads initially. But today, we have a large, very focused thrust on creating infrastructure, roads, etc. If you're also referring to some villages that they are creating some villages along the border areas, which may well be for dual purpose, because when habitat is created, it can also be put to military use. So that is something that we are watching with concern, but our focus today is on creating more roads and infrastructure right up to the borders, where our mobilization can take place much faster than it was earlier. And just to explain, at several places, we had to walk for not hours, for days. And today, our road infrastructure is improving. But we must understand that these are mountainous areas, and it takes much longer to build roads and allied infrastructure in these mountainous areas and passes than it takes in cities and in plains.
General Dua, it was so nice talking to you. You have made very eloquent points about infrastructure building, about our Indian troops thwarting the attempt of the Chinese PLA in trying to capture an area near Yangtze in in part of Arunachal Pradesh. And this is a sensitive area next to northeast of Tawang. And the defense minister made very important points in the parliament today, saying that we had no fatalities and we have some injuries, but we have pushed back the Chinese. Thank you for speaking to us, General Dua.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
You were listening to a discussion on India's befitting reply to China's transgression attempt. The participants were Lieutenant General Satish Dua, defense expert, and Ajay Banerjee, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.